Today, I'm going to be speaking with James Underdown, who's executive director for the Center for Inquiry West in Los Angeles and the chair and founder of the Center for Inquiry Investigations Group. He's also the host of the upcoming web series Skeptilab, The Bunk Stops Here. James, really great to have you on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So one of the things that your organization has done is you have offered money, $500,000, for definitive proof of superpowers or of a supernatural ability. And the money continues to be available. It's never been collected on. So let's first to understand, what are the parameters of the offer?
Well, yeah, the offer is $500,000 for anyone who can prove paranormal ability under scientific test conditions. And that means that you can't just call us up and say, you shot a video of something weird happening, send me a check, or just take it on their word alone. You have to be able to show up, show us in person. And control conditions mean that we're going to make sure, to the best of our ability, that you're not cheating or using some ulterior means to achieve whatever effect you're talking about.
Okay. Let's go through the funnel. How many people have gone through the proper process of applying?
Well, we averaged, a couple of years ago, we had over 250 applications. We average between 1 and 200 applications a year. It does whittle down when people find out what they're going to have to do to do the
Right.
test. I think it self-eliminates the people who are planning to cheat.
Okay.
And in fact, as long as I'm on that subject, no one has ever tried to cheat during a test. Anyone who shows up actually believes that they have these superpowers. But it goes from 100 to 200 a year applying, and we only test like probably half a dozen by the time all is said and done, and everybody understands each other. The negotiations, we figure out what the test is going to be, what they say they can do, what we're comfortable with, and then we're off to the races.
So the fact that people don't try to cheat suggests that these are true believers. They genuinely believe they have whatever power they claim to have.
Absolutely. So far, 100% of them. Now, of course, we do plan for people cheating, so we treat everyone as if we close off these avenues of cheating. But yeah, everyone who shows up thinks they're going to succeed, and a lot of them are really sort of surprised that they can't defy millions to one odds in their telepathic ability.
Okay, so let's talk about that. When they fail, give us a sense of some of the reactions. Does anybody say, hey, you know what? I actually can't do this thing? Or do people blame the test conditions? Do they say it was an off day?
Yeah, I keep saying I'm going to start the big book of excuses.
Yeah.
A lot of them say, too much skeptic energy in the room.
Right.
Some of them say, oh, this test wasn't fair, even though they agreed to it, 5 minutes earlier. Some of them, it takes a few days for them to say that they were cheated or somehow wronged. So it varies. And let's see, so we've been testing people at this point for 23 years, and there have probably been 2 or 3 who have come back and said, maybe I need to rethink this a little bit and reconsider what's going on.
What sorts of claims have you tested? Are there types that are the most common ones?
Yeah, probably the most common test we do is telepathy. So this is people thinking that they can project their thoughts into someone else's mind. That's most common. Some people think that they can receive thoughts. Lately, we've been getting a lot of people who they say they can. Telekinesis is a big one. So the ability to move something with your mind without touching it physically or anything. So a lot of people have been sending in claims about moving clouds or doing things to the sky. Um, Dowsers, we've tested a couple of dowsers, some healers. It's really all over the map. Some people, I mean, we've had people say that they could create a rainstorm in the middle of a desert.
So like for
It's
that
just,
one, do you go out to the middle of the desert?
well, what we in these sort of predictive sort of claims, we make it very clear that look, this can't be in the Amazon jungle. It can't be on an island in Hawaii. It's got to be somewhere that doesn't have rain very often. You have to predict the exact time and the exact place that this is going to happen. So we close these windows down so it's not just a chance occurrence of something that would happen anyway.
Right. How do you deal with, I mean, I'm guessing, although you can tell me if my assumption is wrong, that sometimes people who are struggling with mental health issues come to you and say, I can do this, that, or the other thing. How does that happen? How do you deal with that?
It actually happens fairly commonly, especially with the telepaths.
Mm,
So if you're experiencing voices in your head, you're seeing some hallucination, or you're convinced that everyone can hear your thoughts, or that you can hear their thoughts. Those are symptoms from the DSM, the Diagnostical Statistical Manual from the mental health world.
yeah.
Those are known conditions and symptoms. So, we try to gently suggest to people what you're experiencing is consistent with some forms of mental illness. Please consider that may be what's going on here. We'll test you anyway,
Yeah.
but know that this is, probably what's happening. And by the way, this isn't just me, some layman saying this. We have 3 psychologists on our team and a psychiatrist. So they're all in full agreement that these are common symptoms that people suffering from mental illness sometimes experience.
When people come in, there are instances of this sort of thing where the people who assert these abilities will say that they are, by their nature, not really testable in this way. Now, of course, the problem for organizations like yours is that, well, then we're dealing in an unfalsifiable type of claim. It's I'm
Right.
asserting this, and it's not even the type of claim you can evaluate. Do you get some of those, and then are you
Yeah.
just not able to move forward in that case?
Yeah, so it could be. So some people say that this just happens every once in a while, and I can't put my finger on it. I say when we say, look, we're not going to follow you around 24 hours a day.
Right.
You have to be able to do this sort of on demand. So yeah, it's just by the nature of it. We're not going to fly to you in Istanbul and you know spend 6 weeks with you until this
Right.
pops up again. So and by the way, we test people from all over the world. Just the other day, we tested a guy who was in Spain who said he could hypnotize us into making us roll our eyes up into our head, like you're going into a coma or something.
Yeah.
So some of these things can be tested via Zoom or Skype or whatever, and we're willing to do that if the test lends itself to that.
That's convenient, so you don't have to necessarily fly around to then have your eyes not roll up into the back of your head.
Right, yeah, that could be dangerous if you're on the road.
So the new show, Skeptilab, The Bunk Stops Here, it debuts in just a couple of days, I believe, with 3 episodes on telekinesis, astrology, and telepathy.
Yeah, we started shooting this web series. We've been doing this. My group, the Center for Inquiry Investigations group, has been doing this for 23 years now, since 2000. And, we just decided we have these scads of experiences with these people and the benefit of decades of information from the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, Skeptical Inquirer magazine, all these people that we work with and are a part of. We thought, why not try to get some of this debunking information out there? We actually got a little bit of a grant to help us out with getting it produced. And I know some people here in Hollywood who are mostly on our side in terms of getting science education out to the public. So, we got some of these celebrities to help out, and they're funny. And so we get the information out there with a little bit of humor, and then bring in some experts too to add to the mix and really try to convince people that this stuff isn't what it seems to be.
Yeah, I love this stuff, so I'm really looking forward to it. Astrology in particular is interesting because with a lot of that, that's about personality traits and vague horoscopes and these kind of Barnum type statements. How do you debunk that?
Yeah, some of the things are a little tricky. Astrology was kind of fun. We had the help of Julia Sweeney, who was a star on Saturday Night Live a while back. And one of the things we did was we went out to Hollywood Boulevard and set up a table and said free astrology readings.
Yep.
And we put all the star signs in little bins in front, and people came up and got their reading and read it on camera. Then they scored the reading and said, how well did it do on describing you, the Libra that it pretends to describe? And they're giving it 9s and 10s out of 10. And then we'd say, okay, now pick up an Aries, and it's the exact same astrology reading,
Right.
star reading. So what does that tell you? And a lot of them admitted right on the spot, that you could write something that applies to just about everybody. And it really isn't predictive at all. It's just a general statement, well written toward that end.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is, in some sense, you could say that doesn't really debunk it, because if you just write a statement that applies to most people, everybody would accept it. I guess there would be another way to test it, which would be with different statements and kind of like randomizing them and controlling. You could do a more complex test too, I'm sure.
Right, right. You could set up. You could get 12 people together and say, okay, talk to them a little bit and pick out which one is the Sagittarius, and
Right.
based on your discussion. But we added one other thing to this discussion, and this is what we try to do on Skeptilab, is we got Phil Plait, who is a working astronomer, and we said, look, talk about these constellations out there, which are meant to be the driving force behind astrology. Talk about the influence, the physical influence they have on Earth. And Phil went and talked about how far they are, the fact that just because it might look like a crab up in the sky doesn't mean these stars are anywhere near each other. They're not the same distance or anything. He talked about the gravitational pull of, like a bus going by who has a bigger gravitational pull than, some star light years away. So there's multiple ways to think of why astrology is not real.
Do you get into not so much more in the direction of some of the medical stuff? Like, for example, acupuncture is one that's been looked at extensively. And it seems as though in most tests, so-called sham acupuncture works as well as, quote, real acupuncture. The idea being that the process of having someone listen to your symptoms and then maybe the endorphin release from the needles, no matter where you place them, does have an effect. But it's no different with real versus. Do you get into that stuff at all?
We do. We're not. My group isn't involved in that sort of research per se, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there are aspects of a lot of the faith healing kind of stuff and the alternative medicine sort of stuff that is, the power of suggestion, the placebo effect, have a great deal to do with people feeling better. Now, we do test healers. And in fact, just a month or two ago, we had a guy come in to test for the $500,000 who said he could heal a lipoma on one of our guys' neck. He had a little lipoma on
Hmm.
there. So we measured it, and we got all these cameras, watching it as as he's doing it, and he couldn't do it. So, if your claim is that you can heal it on the spot and have visual, incontrovertible evidence right now that it's healed, that's fine. But you get like Benny Hinn and these televangelist healers who say they're healing people, and we just punch a lot of holes in why that's not really happening.
What happens to all the video footage of these failed tests?
We're getting better since we got the cameras for Skeptilab, we're trying to get a little bit better. We do shoot a lot, most of this stuff, but I don't know how to edit or anything, so it's sort of being stored right now, and we're using some of it for the Skeptilabs.
Okay.
And we'll use it in the future as well, I hope.
It's fascinating stuff. So if there's someone in the audience, there is a $500,000 reward available to you, and you can find out more by looking into the Center for Inquiry. We've been speaking with James Underdown. The upcoming web series debuting in just a couple days is Skeptilab. The bunk stops here. James, really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me on, David. It's been a pleasure.